Curran Bhatia here at Barclays Center for the Tank Romero press conference here with Steven Espinoza, head of Showtime Sports. Steven, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm great. Excited about this one.
This fight, we know it's coming up. Tank Davis, Romero, supposed to happen last December. It's finally happening now. What do you think fans can expect from this one?
Well, look, I think this is a perfect venue. Tank tries to put on a show. I think that's what his fans like about him so much. It's not just about, going in and winning and doing his job, but putting on a show, the showmanship, the outfits, the entrance, all of that. So you put that in Brooklyn. He's fought here twice before, both world title fights. And the crowd really responds to him here. So I think this is a great venue. It's the first time we've been here at Barclays Center in Brooklyn since 2020. And so everyone's, just thrilled. It feels like a little bit like a return to pre-pandemic for us.
Absolutely. First fight since 2020 back at Barclays Center. Now, we know Romero's here. Tank Davis is on the way. Is he taking a page out of the old Floyd Mayweather book, make him wait a little bit?
Yeah, it's hard to tell whether it's just sleeping in or psychological. It's one or the other, maybe a little bit of both. Yeah.
Wanted to ask you about the landscape of boxing right now. For so long, it was two players, HBO, Showtime. It's been a changing, evolving world, and you've certainly changed with it. And we can see by the Showtime Sports schedule that it's not going away anytime soon. There's so many different players. There's streaming involved. What do you think about the landscape the way it is now?
Well, look, it's funny. We've come full circle. When I started here, and it's late 2011. We were sort of seen as sort of one of the players, but definitely behind, I think, HBO in terms of their legacy and their events. And then you fast forward here, and we went from being sort of the underdog to now being the established legacy brand, which is great. I'm certainly not complaining. It shows how much the industry has changed, particularly over the last 5 years. And I think, look, competition in the marketplace is a fact of life, no matter what. I think for the sport itself, as long as those are people who are coming in with a respect toward the sport, understanding of the sport, and not just saying, hey, I'm not mentioning any names here, but we're launching a streaming service. What can we grab that doesn't cost a lot, while we get, other sport rights, and I think there's been some of that. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that after Mayweather-Pacquiao in 2015 and Mayweather-McGregor in 2017, that's when you saw a big influx of people. When you see eye-popping numbers like those, then everyone floods in and says, oh, it must be easy to do that. Let me give this a shot. I'd love to do 500 million of revenue in one night. And so with varying degrees of success. But I think as long as there's certainly room for more than Showtime. And I think a healthy sport would have multiple networks or multiple platforms committed.
And I think we know who you are referencing there. But in terms of the changing landscape, we know other players have come in, Triller, come into the space, YouTubers. One thing you did, you took the step to look at someone like Jake Paul and said, well, why don't we bring that person into our umbrella? And now he's in the ecosystem of good production value, other supporting programming, right? So when you make a decision like that's not a traditional decision. I'm just curious, like internally, was there pushback on something like that? How did you decide to make that decision and say, hey, let's get these eyeballs, let's get these new viewers into the sport? Because that's definitely a good thing.
There was definitely a conversation, because there was a spectrum of opinions, especially before we sort of opened the dialogue and got to know Jake and his team. And look, there's a range of opinions on him today. There's been a range. He's been in the spotlight for 10 years. But the reality was, I think it came down to two things for us. Number one, making sure he was serious about the sport. We're not trying to do a bunch of fights with, some legends who retired 15 years ago. This is important that he's doing competitive fights and that he's trying to exist within a boxing ecosystem. He wants to elevate other fighters on his undercard. And then the question was, well, does it benefit the sport and our boxing business as well? And the idea would be that, that his fans would stick around. And that's exactly what we've seen. So I think, sure, it's not what everybody likes, and few decisions that I make are. But at the end of the day, we're not going to be in the position of saying, well, we're just going to keep doing what we've done for the last 35 years and not taking a flyer now and then. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There was risk in the Mayweather deal, and that turned out fine. there are upsides and downsides to Jake Paul, but I think overall, I think the numbers we've seen have borne this out through the efforts of Jake and Logan and a lot of influencers. There's definitely an uptick in that young 18 to 34, 18 to 29 demo that is following the sport. And I think that is, a direct result of those influencers being active in the sport. I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely. And those eyeballs are translating, right? Fighters on the undercard are getting more attention now. People are continuing to follow their career. In addition, Jake Paul has been vocal about fighter pay and has been, outspoken about that. We talked about the changing landscape, and we know that a service like, for example, ESPN has the ESPN Plus. The Zone we talked about now doing pay-per-view. With Showtime, we knew that a lot of PBC was on Fox before and Showtime. It seems like a lot of it Showtime now. Do you think there will be a push to go to like a Paramount Plus or use CBS and other outlets to expand boxing in the future? I
think so. If there's an opportunity there and it makes sense for us and for the sport, then I think it's very possible. The real question is, we'd never want to expand to the point just for expanding and get to the point where you're really watering down the product. And I think we've seen that at various points over the last 5 years when there have been a lot of platforms aggressively in the market. There's just not enough talent, to do the level of quality that the audience deserves across 6 or 7 different platforms. It's not there yet. It's not the NFL where you can throw on a couple games every week on every different platform and everyone does well. The sport isn't there yet. So I think, if there's good quality content, then that deserves an audience, then we'll put it on. We'll find somewhere to put it on.
And speaking of social media, you've been active on Twitter. You use your Twitter account. And I think there is an appetite there from fans and viewers to see people in leadership positions take a stand sometimes if they see something that isn't, what they think is not correct in any world, not just sports, but in politics and anything. And you've been outspoken, and I applaud you for that because we don't often see that in leadership positions in sports media. What was it about you that when there is something that you don't agree with, let's say it's politics or anything, that you decide to be vocal about that and not hide behind anything? You come out and say your opinion.
Well, at first it was sort of a brand play. Look, we were sort of perceived as and probably were the underdog, the brand that was struggling for respect. So look, when you're the not the dominant brand in the marketplace, you've got to make more noise, you've got to draw attention. And if my little part of it helped draw some attention or communicate our new trajectory, then mission accomplished to some extent. But I think I think what we've seen, and especially over the last couple of years, but even before that, is when you have people who are perceived to be in power. I'm not going to say I have a lot of power, but I certainly have a platform and access to influence decisions. I mean, to me, there's a responsibility that comes with that. And a lot of people are saying, well, you get to that point, you keep your mouth shut because you don't do that at that level. No, I think that's the problem with a lot of our challenges, whether it's social justice or diversity or representation or any of that, is people get to that position and then they stop being vocal. And to me, that's a huge lost opportunity. I mean, it's not just the fact that I'm one of the few senior Latino executives in sports media, but that's definitely part of it. If I'm not trying to push the envelope and open the door to others, then what am I doing?
Certainly pushing the envelope, expanding, and that's going to continue here. I'm going to let you go because I know we're starting the press conference here. Tank Davis versus Romero. Steven Espinoza, thank you so much for the time.
Great to see you.